The wind roared across the amber plains of Dusthaven, Wyoming, a merciless gale that carved through Cottonwood Hollow like a blade honed on distant snow-capped peaks. It carried the sharp tang of sagebrush, the faint musk of frost, and a whisper of secrets buried in the earth. In the fading glow of a crimson sunset, Aara stood alone, a fragile silhouette against the vast, unforgiving expanse. Barely 7, her chestnut curls whipped wildly in the gusts, matted with dust and despair. Her hazel eyes, wide and glistening, mirrored the dying light, holding a fear too heavy for her small heart. A patched calico dress, faded blue and frayed, at the hem clung to her frail frame, offering little shield against the autumn chill. Her bare feet, bloodied from jagged stones, left faint prints in the dry soil, and her trembling hands clutched a whittled wooden sparrow, its edges smoothed by countless touches, a solitary keepsake from a home that had turned its back on her. Bittercreek's scorn still echoed in Aara's ears, the townsfolk's whispers cutting deeper than the wind. No child, no worth. A burden, a bad seed. Her mother's cold hands had shoved her toward the hollow, her face a mask of weary resentment. Her father's voice, rough as gravel, had sealed her fate. Stay gone, or you'll curse us all. The memory burned, a fresh wound, as Aara stumbled forward, her sobs breaking the silence, only to be swallowed by the plain's indifference. She sank beside a gnarled cottonwood, its twisted branches clawing at the sky like a plea for mercy. The sparrow pressed against her chest. Her tears soaked the earth, each drop a silent cry for a warmth she'd never known. Hunger gnawed at her belly, a familiar ache sharpened by the cold seeping into her bones. But it was the loneliness that threatened to break her, the terror of vanishing, unseen, unwanted, into the dusk. The stars emerged, cold and distant, their silver light casting eerie shadows across Cottonwood Hollow. A coyote's howl pierced the night, a reminder of the wolves that prowled these plains after dark. Aara curled tighter, her breath hitching, her small body trembling as the world grew vast and cruel. She was too young for such betrayal, her heart a fragile ember flickering against the wind's relentless assault. But Dusthaven's plains were not as empty as they seemed, and fate was stirring in the twilight. Caleb trudged through the gathering gloom, his weathered boots crunching on gravel, a rifle slung across his lean shoulder. At 32, his sandy hair was streaked with gray, his brown eyes shadowed by a grief that clung like dust. His wife, Clara, had been taken by fever 2 winters past, leaving his homestead, a mile off, with its creaking boards and barren fields, a silent testament to his solitude. He'd been tracking a deer, his lantern casting a warm, wavering glow, its light dancing on sagebrush and stone. Meat was scarce, and hunger was a constant companion. But Caleb's hunt was driven by more than survival, a need to fill the hollow in his chest, to keep moving through a life that felt like ash. A faint cry stopped him cold, slicing through the wind's wail. It wasn't a beast or the creak of branches. It was human, raw with despair, a sound that tugged at the scars on his heart. His lantern lifted, its beam cutting through the dusk, searching the hollow's shadows. The cry came again, softer. Now, a child's voice, broken and desperate. Caleb's breath caught, his steps quickening as he pushed through brittle grass, the weight of his rifle forgotten. He'd known loss, but this was something darker, a cruelty he couldn't fathom. The cottonwood loomed ahead, its gnarled form a sentinel in the gloom, and there, huddled at its base, was a small figure, barely visible, her sobs a knife to his soul. Who was this child, abandoned in the heart of Cottonwood Hollow? And what would Caleb do in the face of such a heart-wrenching discovery? The moon rose over Cottonwood Hollow, its silver glow bathing the amber plains of Dusthaven, Wyoming, in an ethereal light that softened the harsh edges of the night. The wind, laced with frost, wailed through gnarled cottonwoods, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against a starry sky. Caleb stood rooted to the earth, his lantern casting a warm, flickering pool around a sight that gripped his heart. Aara, a 7-year-old girl, huddled at the base of a weathered tree. Her chestnut curls, tangled with dust, framed a pale face, streaked with tears, her hazel eyes wide with a terror that mirrored the vast, unforgiving plain. Her faded blue calico dress, patched and torn, clung to her frail frame, offering no defense against the autumn chill. Her bare feet, bloodied from sharp stones, curled beneath her, and her small hands clutched a whittled wooden sparrow, its edges smoothed by desperate touches, a fragile tether to a life that had cast her out. Caleb's boots sank into the dry soil as he knelt, his rifle propped against the cottonwood, its cold steel a stark contrast to the warmth of his lantern. At 32, his sandy hair was streaked with gray, his brown eyes shadowed by the weight of loss. His wife, Clara, taken by fever 2 winters past. The lantern's glow danced across Aara's trembling lips, tinged blue, her sobs softening to ragged gasps that cut deeper than any blade. "Little one," he whispered, his voice rough from disuse, softened by a tenderness he hadn't felt since Clara's laughter filled his days. Aara flinched, her eyes darting like a cornered fawn's, seeing not rescue but another threat in his weathered face. Her body curled tighter, the sparrow pressed to her chest as if it could shield her from a world that had shown her only cruelty. "Who did this to you?" Caleb asked, his breath clouding in the cold air, his words more a plea than a question. Aara's silence was her only answer, her gaze fixed on the lantern's flame, its flicker a fleeting comfort in her sea of fear. Caleb's mind churned. Bittercreek, a hardscrabble town 10 miles off, was known for its unforgiving ways, its folks quick to shun those deemed useless. Whispers of outcasts, of children abandoned for bringing bad luck, had reached his ears, at the trading post, but to see it, to hold its truth in the form of this shivering child, ignited a spark of anger in his chest. His homestead, a mile away, was a lonely outpost of creaking logs and barren fields, barely sustaining him. Another mouth to feed was a weight he could scarcely bear, yet the thought of leaving her to the wolves, to the frost that would claim her by dawn, was a betrayal he couldn't stomach. He shrugged off his worn woolen coat, its leather patches frayed from years of toil, and draped it over Aara's small shoulders. The coat swallowed her, its warmth a fragile shield against the night's bite, its faint scent of pine and smoke a whisper of safety. "You ain't staying out here," Caleb said, the words a vow forged in the heat of his stirring heart. Carefully he lifted her, her weight so slight it ached his soul. Aara stiffened, her hands gripping the sparrow, but she didn't resist, her cold cheek brushing his flannel shirt. Caleb cradled her close, the lantern swinging in his free hand, its light cutting a path through the hollow's shadows. The journey to his homestead was slow, the plains stretching under the moon's watchful gaze, each step stirring memories of Clara, her gentle hands mending his shirts, her belief in kindness, even when the larder was bare. Caleb's life was a patchwork of grief, but Aara's presence was a needle, piercing its seams. The homestead loomed ahead, a squat cabin of weathered logs, its single chimney silent under the stars. Caleb pushed open the door, hinges creaking, and stepped into the dim interior, where the air held the scent of pine and old sorrow. A cold hearth sat dark, its embers long gone, and a rough-hewn table bore only a tin cup and a cracked plate, relics of a solitary life. Aara's hazel eyes flickered, scanning the sparse room, her fear a heavy veil. Caleb set her gently on his cot, its frame draped with a patched quilt, its faded colors a faint echo of better days. He knelt by the hearth, striking flint with steady hands, coaxing a small flame to life. The fire's glow spread, casting dancing shadows on the log walls, pushing back the chill that clung to Aara's bones. Caleb turned to her, his brown eyes soft but searching, meeting her wary gaze. "You're safe now, little one," he said, the words feeling strange, yet right on his tongue. Aara clutched the sparrow, her silence a fortress built from Bittercreek's betrayal. The fire crackled, its warmth a tentative promise, but a faint sound, a rustle in the sagebrush outside, made Caleb's hand pause on the flint. His eyes narrowed, glancing toward the door. The plains were never truly silent, but this felt different, deliberate. Was it the wind, a coyote, or something hunting in the night? What shadowed presence lingered beyond the cabin's walls, and could Caleb protect the child he'd vowed to save? The fire's glow flickered inside Caleb's cabin, a humble refuge of weathered logs nestled on the edge of Dusthaven's amber plains. Its warmth pushed against the chill seeping through the cracks, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Aara, 7 and frail, sat on the cot, her chestnut curls damp with sweat, her hazel eyes wide but wary, clutching her whittled wooden sparrow like a lifeline. The faded blue calico dress hung loosely on her small frame, and Caleb's oversized, woolen coat, draped over her shoulders, pooled around her like a shield. Her bare feet, still bloodied from Cottonwood Hollow's stones, dangled above the dirt floor, and her breath came in shallow gasps, as if the weight of Bittercreek's betrayal lingered in her lungs. The cabin's sparse furnishings, a tin cup on a scarred table, a cracked plate, a cold rifle by the door, spoke of Caleb's solitary struggle, a life pared to its bones since Clara's fevered passing. Caleb, 32, knelt by the hearth, his sandy hair streaked with grey, his brown eyes reflecting the fire's light as he fed kindling to the flames. His flannel shirt, patched at the elbows, stretched across his lean shoulders, and his hands, calloused from years of toil, moved with a quiet precision. The rustle outside, a faint snap of sagebrush, still echoed in his mind, tightening his jaw. Dusthaven's plains were alive with coyotes and wind, but this sound felt deliberate, like a footfall too careful to be chance. He glanced at Aara, her silence louder than any cry, her gaze fixed on the sparrow, as if it held the answers to a world that had abandoned her. "You're safe here," Caleb said, his voice low, the words more a promise to himself than to her. But the doubt in her hazel eyes cut deep. Could he, a man broken by loss, protect a child so wounded? The fire crackled, its warmth a fragile defense against the night's bite. But Aara's fear was a colder thing, rooted in Bittercreek's scorn. No child, no worth, the townsfolk had hissed, their judgment a lash that drove her parents to shove her into the hollow. Caleb's heart stirred with anger, a slow burn against those who deemed her useless. He rose, crossing to the table, where a tin of dried jerky sat, its contents meager but enough for now. "You hungry?" he asked, offering a strip. Aara's eyes flicked up, hesitant, then dropped back to the sparrow. She shook her head, her silence a wall Caleb couldn't yet breach. He set the jerky beside her, respecting her quiet, his thoughts drifting to Clara, her gentle way with strays, her belief that even the smallest life deserved care. The cabin's door rattled softly, a vibration that stilled Caleb's breath. He grabbed his rifle, its weight familiar, and moved to the window, peering through a crack in the shutter. Moonlight bathed the plains, silvering the sagebrush, but the shadows near the fence line shifted, too fluid for the wind. A coyote, perhaps, or something worse. Bittercreek wasn't far, and folks there held grudges. Had Aara's kin changed their minds, come to reclaim her, or worse, to ensure she stayed gone? Caleb's grip tightened, his brown eyes narrowing. He'd seen men driven by shame to darker deeds, and Aara's abandonment felt like a secret too. Heavy to stay buried. "Stay there," he whispered to Aara, his voice steady, despite the pulse in his ears. She nodded, her small hands tightening on the sparrow, her eyes darting to the door. Caleb eased it open, the hinges creaking, and stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. The wind stung his face, carrying the faint scent of smoke. Not from his hearth, but something distant, acrid. The plains stretched silent, the cottonwoods looming like sentinels, but a glint caught his eye, a flicker of metal near the hollow's edge, gone as quickly as it appeared. His heart thudded, memories of Clara's fevered nights mixing with a new fear, for Aara, for the fragile spark she'd ignited in his life. Back inside, Caleb barred the door, his face grim but calm. Aara watched him, her silence a question. He couldn't answer. He knelt beside her, brushing a curl from her forehead, his touch awkward but kind. "We'll rest tonight," he said. "But tomorrow, we'll figure this out." The fire's glow softened her pale face, but her eyes held a flicker of something new. Not trust, not yet, but a faint hope. Outside, the wind howled, masking, the sound of boots retreating into the night. Caleb's rifle stayed close, his resolve hardening. He'd taken Aara in and he wouldn't let her go, not to Bittercreek, not to the shadows. Who was watching from the plains, and what did they want with the child Caleb had sworn to protect? The fire's glow bathed Caleb's cabin in a soft, amber warmth, its crackle a fragile defiance against the cold night pressing on Dusthaven's amber plains. Shadows danced across the weathered log walls, flickering over Aara's small form, on the cot. At 7, her chestnut curls spilled across the patched quilt, her hazel eyes glinting with unease as she clutched her whittled wooden sparrow. Her faded blue calico dress, torn and dirt-streaked, hung loosely, and Caleb's oversized woolen coat, draped over her, pooled like a protective shroud. Her bare feet, scabbed from Cottonwood Hollow's stones, curled beneath her, and her breath was shallow, as if Bittercreek's betrayal still lingered in the air. The cabin's sparse interior, a scarred table with a tin cup, a cracked plate, a rifle propped by the door, spoke of Caleb's lean existence, a life whittled down since Clara's fever claimed her 2 winters past. Caleb, 32, stood by the barred door, his sandy hair gray-streaked, his brown eyes sharp with vigilance. His flannel shirt, patched and faded, stretched across his lean frame, and his calloused hands gripped the rifle, its weight a steady anchor. The rustle outside, the acrid whiff of distant smoke and the fleeting glint of metal near the hollow haunted him. Bittercreek's shadow loomed closer than he'd feared. Folks there didn't forgive, and Aara's abandonment felt like a wound they'd come to cauterize. He glanced at Aara, her silence a heavy veil, her gaze fixed on the sparrow as if it could hold back the terror of a world that had cast her out. "Try to rest," he said, his voice low, steady, though his heart raced. Her hazel eyes met his, wary but searching, a flicker of hope buried beneath her fear. The fire's warmth couldn't erase the chill of doubt in Caleb's chest. He'd taken Aara in, a child branded useless by Bittercreek's cruel code, but protecting her meant more than shelter. It meant facing whatever hunted her. He moved to the hearth, adding a log, the flames flaring briefly, casting Aara's pale face in sharp relief. "You like stories?" he asked, desperate to ease her tension. Aara's fingers tightened on the sparrow, but she nodded, a small, hesitant motion. Caleb sat on a stool, his voice softening. "Clara used to tell of stars, said they were dreams the sky held safe." Aara's eyes lifted, curious, and for a moment the cabin felt less like a fortress and more like a haven. Sharp knocks shattered the quiet, 3 heavy raps that rattled the door. Aara gasped, shrinking into the quilt, her sparrow clutched like a shield. Caleb sprang up, rifle in hand, his pulse hammering. "Who's there?" he called, his voice hard. A gruff reply came through the wood. "Jonas Tate, from Bittercreek. Open up." Caleb's jaw tightened. Jonas, a rancher with a reputation for settling scores, wasn't here for trade. He cracked the door, rifle ready, moonlight revealing Jonas's gaunt face, his black hat shadowing cold eyes. 2 men flanked him, their hands near holsters, their breath clouding in the frost. "Heard you got a stray," Jonas said, his voice like gravel. "That girl belongs to Bittercreek." Caleb's grip steadied, his brown eyes unyielding. "She belongs nowhere but here," he said, his tone a warning. Jonas's lip curled, his gaze flicking past Caleb to Aara, who trembled on the cot. "Her kin say she's trouble. Bad luck. Hand her over or we'll take her." Aara's breath hitched, her hazel eyes wide with the old terror of abandonment. Caleb stepped forward, blocking Jonas's view, his rifle angled just enough to speak for him. "You're on my land. Leave, or you'll regret it." The men shifted, hands twitching, but Jonas raised a hand, his smile thin. "We'll be back," he said, turning into the night, their boots crunching away. Caleb barred the door, his heart pounding, and turned to Aara. Her small face was pale, her eyes locked on him, a question unspoken. "Will you keep me?" He knelt beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "They won't touch you," he promised, his voice fierce with a resolve he hadn't felt in years. The fire's glow warmed the cabin, but the scent of smoke lingered, heavier now, drifting from the plains. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Smoke wasn't just from a campfire. He grabbed his lantern, its light ready to pierce the dark, but Aara's small hand caught his sleeve, her touch a silent plea. "Stay," she whispered, her first word to him, soft as a prayer. Outside, the wind carried a faint crackle, and the horizon glowed faintly red. What was burning in the heart of Dusthaven, and who was behind it? The fire's glow flickered inside Caleb's cabin, a fragile beacon against the darkness cloaking Dusthaven's amber plains. Its warmth curled through the weathered log walls, casting soft shadows that danced over Aara's small form on the cot. 7 years old, her chestnut curls spilled across a patched quilt, her hazel eyes wide with a mix of fear and fragile trust, clutching her whittled wooden sparrow. Her faded blue calico dress, torn from Cottonwood Hollow's trials, hung loosely, and Caleb's woolen coat, draped over her, enveloped her like a promise. Her scabbed feet, still tender, were tucked beneath her, and her breath steadied, though the echo of Jonas Tate's threat, "We'll be back," lingered like a storm cloud. The cabin's sparse interior, with its scarred table, tin cup and rifle by the door, held the weight of Caleb's solitary years, a life stripped bare since Clara's fever 2 winters ago. Caleb, 32, stood by the shuttered window, his sandy hair gray-streaked, his brown eyes scanning the moonlit plains. His flannel shirt, patched at the elbows, clung to his lean frame, and his hands, rough from toil, gripped the rifle, its barrel glinting faintly. The crackle of fire on the horizon, its red glow pulsing against the night, sent a chill down his spine. The acrid smoke seeping through the cracks wasn't from a stray campfire. It was deliberate, a warning from Bittercreek's unforgiving heart. Jonas Tate's words, heavy with menace, replayed in Caleb's mind, but Aara's whispered "stay" anchored him, her first word a spark that kindled his resolve. He turned to her, her hazel eyes meeting his, no longer just fearful but searching, as if testing the truth of his promise. "They won't touch you." "We can't stay put," Caleb said, his voice low but firm, kneeling beside the cot. "That fire's too close." Aara's fingers tightened on the sparrow, her small nod showing a courage that belied her years. Caleb's heart ached. She was too young for such burdens, yet her trust stirred something fierce within him, a fire brighter than the one threatening the plains. He grabbed a canvas sack, stuffing it with jerky, a canteen, and Clara's old shawl, its faded green threads soft with memory. "We'll head to the ridge," he said. "Find cover till dawn." Aara slid off the cot, her bare feet silent on the dirt floor, clutching the coat and sparrow, ready to follow. The door creaked as Caleb eased it open, lantern dimmed to avoid prying eyes. The plains stretched under a silver moon, the horizon's red glow brighter now, smoke curling like a serpent. He led Aara out, rifle in hand, her small hand gripping his sleeve, a tether in the dark. The wind carried ash, stinging their eyes, and the distant crack of burning sagebrush echoed like gunfire. Caleb's boots crunched on gravel. Aara's steps light but determined, her hazel eyes darting to the shadows. They skirted Cottonwood Hollow, its gnarled trees looming like ghosts, and climbed toward a rocky ridge, its jagged outline a shield against the plain's dangers. Halfway up, a shout cut through the night. "There they are!" Jonas Tate's voice sharp and cold. Caleb spun, spotting 3 riders silhouetted against the fire's glow, their horses' hooves thundering. Aara gasped, pressing close, her sparrow clutched tight. Caleb pushed her behind a boulder, rifle raised, his brown eyes fierce. "Stay." "Down," he whispered, his voice a steel vow. The riders slowed, Jonas's gaunt face lit by a torch, his black hat shadowing a cruel smirk. "You can't run, Caleb," he called. "That girl's a curse. Hand her over, or burn with her." Aara's breath hitched, her old fears flaring, but Caleb's steady presence held her fast. Caleb fired a warning shot, the crack echoing off the ridge, scattering the horses. "She's no curse," he growled, "and you'll not lay a hand." "On her," Jonas laughed, torchlight glinting off his revolver, but a new sound, a low rumble, stilled him. Hoofbeats, not from his men, but from the hollow below. A lone rider, cloaked in a gray duster, emerged, face hidden, rifle glinting. Jonas's men hesitated, their eyes darting. Caleb's grip tightened, unsure if this stranger was friend or foe. Aara peeked out, her hazel eyes wide, sensing a shift in the air. The rider raised a hand, a silent signal, and Jonas's smirk faded. "This ain't over," he spat, wheeling his horse, his men following into the smoke. The lone rider lingered, their gaze unseen but heavy, then vanished into the hollow's shadows. Caleb lowered his rifle, his heart pounding, and pulled Aara close, her small frame trembling but safe. The ridge loomed above, offering refuge, but the fire's glow spread, licking closer to Dusthaven's heart. Who was the mysterious rider, and what did they want with Aara's fragile new beginning? Dawn's first light crept over Dusthaven's amber plains, painting the rocky ridge in hues of gold and rose, a fragile promise against the smoldering horizon. Caleb crouched behind a boulder, his sandy hair gray-streaked, his brown eyes fierce, with resolve, rifle steady in his calloused hands. His flannel shirt, patched and dusty, clung to his lean frame, the weight of the night's trials etched in his weathered face. Beside him, Aara, 7 and small, pressed close, her chestnut curls tangled, her hazel eyes wide but steady, clutching her whittled wooden sparrow. Her faded blue calico dress was torn, Caleb's woolen coat slipping off her shoulders, but her grip on his sleeve was firm, a silent vow to stay near. The fire's red glow pulsed below, smoke curling like a specter across Cottonwood Hollow, its crackle a reminder of Bittercreek's wrath. Caleb's heart pounded, Jonas Tate's threat, "Hand her over or burn," echoing in his ears. The lone rider's intervention, their gray duster vanishing into the hollow, had bought them time, but the fire's spread told a grimmer tale. Aara's whispered "stay" from the cabin lingered, her trust a spark that fueled his defiance. "We're almost safe," he murmured, his voice low, brushing a curl from her forehead. Aara nodded, her sparrow clutched tight, her courage a quiet flame. Caleb scanned the ridge's path, leading to a trailhead where a wagon train was rumored to pass, a chance for refuge if they could reach it. Hoofbeats thundered below, shattering the dawn's calm. Jonas Tate emerged, his gaunt face lit by torchlight, black hat shadowing cold eyes, revolver glinting. 2 riders flanked him, their horses snorting, dust swirling in the fire's glow. "You can't hide her forever, Caleb," Jonas shouted, his voice venomous. Aara flinched, her hazel eyes flashing with old fears, but Caleb's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "She's no curse," he roared, standing, rifle raised. "You'll not touch her." The riders advanced, but a sharp crack, a gunshot from the ridge's crest, halted them. Jonas clutched his arm, blood seeping, his torch falling to the dirt. The lone rider, cloaked in gray, stood above, rifle smoking, face hidden, but presence commanding. Jonas's men froze, then fled, their leader cursing as he retreated into the smoke. Caleb pulled Aara close, his heart racing. "Move," he urged. Guiding her along the trail, the wagon train's dust cloud now visible. The lone rider watched, silent, then vanished, their motives a mystery that lingered like ash. The train's leader, a grizzled woman named Mara, welcomed them with wary kindness, offering bread and a blanket. "You're safe here," she said, handing Caleb a map to Sagebrush Valley, a settlement open to outcasts. Aara's eyes met Caleb's, a spark of hope igniting. They wouldn't just survive, they'd build a home. Months later, Sagebrush Valley bloomed with promise, its fields green under a summer sun. Caleb's new cabin, built with Aara's help, stood sturdy, its hearth alive with laughter. Aara, her calico dress replaced by a sturdy brown frock, tended a garden, her sparrow now joined by carved stars on a shelf. Her hazel eyes shone, her silence replaced by soft hums, her trust in Caleb a bond forged in fire. He, no longer a grieving widower, found purpose in her smiles, his brown eyes lighter, his hands teaching her to whittle and sew. Yet, as Caleb stood on the valley's edge one evening, a grey-dusted rider watched from afar, a shadow of Dusthaven's past. What secrets did the lone rider carry, and would Sagebrush Valley withstand their return? This tale echoes the resilience of 19th-century frontier outcasts, like Aara, who found family beyond blood. In the Wild West, settlements like Sagebrush Valley rose from shared hardship, where compassion defied cruelty. Western romances weave such stories, reminding us that love, whether parental or communal, can heal even the deepest wounds, a truth cherished by history buffs and fans of Prairie Love Legends. If this saga of courage and love in Dusthaven stirred your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to Moonlit Western Sagas for more cowboy heart stories. Ring the bell to join our frontier journey and share your thoughts below. What makes a family in the Wild West? Let's ride into the next tale together.